The Game Boy Advance. A technological marvel, really. Growing up in the early 2000s, this thing was an absolute lifesaver. And as I grow up, I miss those simpler days, which had me thinking, how far can we push the Game Boy Advance in 2023? Could I replace my TV, my phone, laptop, home console with a Game Boy? Now, for the next 48 hours, that's exactly what we were testing. That's right, no phone, no laptop, no tablet, just this little guy right here. Let's see how we fare in this experiment. Now, I have a lot of Game Boys, so I had to really think about what I needed here. So I decided to go with these two right here to help me get through this, and you'll see why I chose these ones specifically as we go on. But first, I grabbed my new Game Boy Advance SP. I had to grab an SP for this challenge. The portability is going to be key, especially here in New York where I live. This one is customized purple and green, kind of giving me Joker vibes.
Why so serious?
And has this awesome IPS screen. And this has actually been my daily Game Boy for the past couple of weeks. Second, we have this one, which I've actually barely played, but it has one cool feature that I think will come in handy later. And then of course I have access to my entire arsenal of games, including my Game Boy Advance video cards. And I'm a big music guy, so I needed to figure out a way to listen to music that isn't the Mario theme on repeat. So after some digging, I was able to find an album from an artist on Bandcamp that was transferred to a Game Boy Advance cartridge. So needless to say, I will become very familiar with Remute over the next 48 hours. And the 48 hours starts now. I typically start my day catching up on social media and emails, but I'm not really connected to anything, so Mario Kart it is. I'm trying to mimic my day as much as I can, and since I'm already playing a game first thing, I can already tell I'll be gaming a lot over the next 48 hours. Breakfast is going to be one of those better experiences though. I got my coffee, my Fruity Pebbles, and Pokemon. This is really some of the moments I miss when I was a kid. A great cartoon, and enough sugar to question why breakfast and dessert are any different. For the next hour or so, I cycled through some more Game Boy Advance videos, throwing on some Sonic, and starting the classic Shark Tale.
Can't touch this.
And as the day goes on, I finally finished that masterpiece of a movie. If you haven't seen Shark Tale,
what are you even doing with your life?
but seriously, go watch it right now. And if you have it on the Game Boy Advance, go watch it that way. But then it started to dawn on me. I don't think I'm gonna get any work done for the next couple of days, so I'm trying to think of ways to like challenge myself that's not playing video games. So let me think on it, get ready for the day, and we'll circle back. Okay, so here's what I came up with. I'm going to challenge myself to get a picture of another Game Boy Advance in the wild with this. If you don't know, this is the Game Boy camera, a cartridge with only the best picture quality. This seems like a daunting task for 2023. People usually play it on their phones or with their Switch, but I have a plan. Now this might be cheating, but I think there's a Game Boy display at the Nintendo store in Manhattan, so I'm going to consider that my destination. But you also might be thinking, how are we gonna travel with all these relics? Boom! It's fanny pack time. Fanny pack check. I've got the SP, a Disney Channel Game Boy Advance video cartridge, Mario Kart, Pokemon Ash Gray, and Over the Hedge. Got the Game Boy camera, of course, and like I mentioned before, maybe one of the saving graces of this challenge, the Remute music cartridge. So before we head out, I actually realized this the other day, but the SP doesn't actually have a headphone jack, so I got this adapter that plugs into the charging port to give it a headphone jack. See? Apple wasn't the first one to get rid of the headphone jack, guys. Okay, we're here. Let's hope that they have it. And there it was, a Game Boy Advance. Seriously though, it was pretty cool to see the history here, but we didn't come all this way just to see a Game Boy. We gotta have a photo shoot too. Alright, our challenge accepted was a success, I would say. We did not find one in the wild, but you know, the plan was to get to the Nintendo store, and we did it. We photographed the Game Boy Advance with a Game Boy camera. Let's head on back. Alright, so we are back in the nostalgia office, and the evening is upon us. It's about 7 o'clock, and honestly, I'm feeling pretty good. Like, I was able to get out and do something with the Game Boy that wasn't actually gaming or video. But here's where things are gonna get a little bit more interesting. Now, I know I said I'm only gonna use the Game Boy Advance for 48 hours, which is true, but I have a couple other things to enhance our Game Boy Advance experience. I mentioned earlier in the video that this Game Boy has a special feature, and that feature is HDMI output, meaning I can hook up this exact Game Boy to a TV and play to my heart's content. Now, I've never tried this before, so I don't know if it's gonna work, but really, all we need is the Game Boy, which, like I said, has HDMI output. That's a mini HDMI right there. And then it also has a USB-C port at the bottom, which connects to the dock it came with, which that has an output right there. And then 2 ports on the side for controllers. And then, of course, we have an SNES controller. So it's actually a little less streamlined than I thought. The dock is literally just to provide power to the Game Boy and to the controller. And then up top is where the HDMI out is. I was kind of under the assumption that it was all in one with the dock. But that being said, turn it on, and we are cooking, ladies and gentlemen. There's Power Rangers Wild Force right on my monitor. Before we start playing though, I wanted to plug in a Game Boy Advance video cartridge to see if that worked. Because as you start it up, it says that it doesn't work with the GameCube player, which was made to play Game Boy games on the GameCube. But as you can see, it works with this HDMI output. So if you want a super pixelated, laggy version of Shark Tale, this is the way to do it, I guess. Heading into the night, I started playing Kim Possible 2 Draken's Demise, which has seriously been one of the only games as of late to really impress me. But like, who is that? Because that is not Kim Possible. This is like a knockoff Kim that kind of looks like a standardized Bratz doll. And I mean, she's terrible. Any of these moves, Kim would have been able to land those. But I also had to plug in some classic GBA games like Tak, and I had to throw on the first Game Boy Advance game I ever owned, Power Rangers Wild Force. And I usually watch YouTube to end the night, though now I had to substitute that for some high-definition Nickelodeon classics. Perfect day to end day one on some SpongeBob. I'm gonna get some sleep, but I will see you for Fruity Pebbles time. Heading into the second day, I knew I couldn't just repeat the day before, but there really isn't a way to get the Game Boy connected unless... Now, back in the day when there was analog TV, you could buy one of these, plug in your Game Boy, and then use the antenna to try and get some live TV streamed right to your Game Boy Advance. Though unfortunately nowadays you can't get a single thing. But perhaps even cooler is that this thing has a video input, meaning theoretically I could plug in my laptop and use this thing as an external monitor, which means I'm technically still using my Game Boy. But to be honest, I don't know if it's even gonna work, but let's try it out.
Fail.
Okay, so I guess this means really no work for today, but I know of a way that we can utilize this thing in another way that also might be cheating, but let's try it anyway. Pretty cool, right? Now, have you ever played Super Smash Bros. For the N64 on your Game Boy Advance? Now, you might think this is cheating, but I really see it as early 2000s Game Boy innovation. And then I was even able to hook up my iPod, so now we're playing Power Rangers Wild Force on the Game Boy Advance. The entire day, though, there was only one thing on my mind. I couldn't let this imposter Kim from yesterday taint the good name of Kim Possible. So I whipped her into shape, or at least I tried. And after a few hours of playing, I did it. I took him down. I beat that blue-faced miscreant they call Dr. drack it. But seriously, I haven't beaten a Game Boy Advance game in a really long time, and it is just the most satisfying thing. And that was it. 48 hours with the Game Boy Advance. I have to say, I found a new appreciation for the little guy. I mean, my Game Boy and I were glued at the hip back in the day, and then one day you just put it down. But I really encourage you to pick up that old Game Boy, that old phone, that old toy, and see what memories it brings back for you. Thanks for watching.
Give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make.